Kathy Tracy, Carrie Thomas, Todd Lowry, Laura Dom, Janice Taylor Brown, Natasha Telger, and Tara Driver. Again, if you didn't hear your name, thanks, Molly. If you didn't hear your name, go ahead and put it into the chat. Then I'll kick it back over to Becky.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So just to revisit our community agreements, we'll keep customers central to the discussion. We'll take and make space so that everyone has room to participate. As much as possible, we'll avoid jargon and explain our acronyms. And together we know a lot, and there are no silly questions. And also just to keep us rooted in our work group priorities. I know many people on this call have many committees and things that they participate in. So we just like to refresh everyone's memory that our priority are to integrate service delivery, improving access and opportunity for all participants, cross-agency collaboration, review the 2019 self-assessment, and reassessing the current service integration policy and related resources to understand the barriers to integrating services, service integration's current relation to a post-COVID workforce, and opportunities to improve operational, why did we put that word in there? Long-term. So ultimately, we will want to have any revisions to the policy, any things we want to add or provide more clarity or rethink done by July 2023. Okay, so as an overview to October meeting, I really feel like we kind of solidified as a group in October because we have been restarting this working group and had kind of a lot of moving parts to examine as we got up and running. And I want to thank everyone again for their survey responses. And we discussed how we will do research areas, that will do focus groups, that will involve the Illinois Workforce Partnership, that will do some local plan scans and MOU research. We'll look at LWIA websites just to take a very holistic view of how the various providers, the various one-stops are engaging the community. And we had our work plan approved at last month's meeting. And so just to review that work plan, this month, and what we're going to talk about at today's meeting is focus group preparation and progress that we're making toward actually having the focus group, and also hearing an update from Carrie about looking at the MOUs and what she saw might be relevant to our work. Next month, we won't have a meeting because we will be doing the focus groups and having the conversations with the one-stop operators. We'll come back and report on the focus groups and the research that we've done at the January meeting. And then we'll just take our time with the three goals 1, 3, and 4, and make sure that any type of update that we want to do to those policies in terms of customer-centered design, intake assessment, and service goals are fine-tuned so that we can have that done by May's meeting, so that we'll be ready to show it to the CIC committee. So that's just to bring everyone up to speed. Did I leave anything out, or are there any questions that anyone has as I kind of just
This is Kathy. I do have a quick question. I understand doing focus groups for the one-stop operators, but we have locations across the state that are not always connected seamlessly through one-stop, which is one of the things we're trying to capture. So are we going to do focus groups for programs that are not directly linked to a one-stop?
That was not something that we had in our work plan.
I feel like we're going to miss a lot of the service integration for some of these. I just feel like we're going to miss a lot of where we're finding the hiccups and where they're probably need. I just feel we're going to miss a lot if we don't also include some of the other locations. I'd love to hear what the other partners think about that, or what the concerns could be about excluding them or including them. So I'd love to hear what people think about that.
Yes. Chara agrees. Yeah.
I think this is Carrie. I think that that's a really good point. And I think a way to describe our system and the extent to which like the American Job Center and who's in it delivering services directly in the American Job Center does or does not cover every single title or every single required partner would be useful. That's what that makes me think of, Kathy. And then I agree that there's knowing that then would be, well, like, how do we find out about our service integration challenges from those partners that are just linked to the American Job Center, not necessarily delivering services on site? And that's a lot of work to cover everybody, but there might be a way to think about, you know, is there a cross section, right, of programs that would cover, you know, right, most of the issues in the state or characteristics or something like that. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, Justin.
If we were looking at it from a customer-centric point of view, someone walks into a one-job center or a one-stop center and gets help, then just because, you know, Job Corps is not there, or the migrant seasonal worker program might not be there, that doesn't affect that person walking into the one-stop who's going to get services. So the original question, can you just help me understand what you're thinking about when you're making it your suggestion?
Yeah, so if I live in Macomb, Illinois, and I go to Spoon River College, there's not necessarily a one-stop there, but we do have partners collaborating and working together for services. So where does that service integration intersect for that particular student? Or I could be at IECC, or I could be at Shawnee. I could be, you know, where we might have some one-stops, we might not have them throughout the state, where my student from Monmouth, Illinois may not be able to get to a one-stop. So if we're only looking at the one-stops as a part of the service integration, we're going to miss a majority of our state, people who have to travel into that one-stop. And if we're looking at service integration and how we are setting up practices and policies to work collaboratively for the betterment of our students, then we have to look at the students who don't have easy access and who only have access through linkages, or maybe not in their immediate community access at all, and it's all done differently. So where do those people fit as we're looking at service integration? That was my thought process, is there are pockets in the state that are just not directly with a one-stop, and we need to include that.
Got it. So when I see those service integration goals of things like customer service design and staff and intake and service and career pathways, thinking about how everyone within the workforce system, not just at a one-stop, can think about career information and intakes. And got it. Makes a lot of sense. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And then I will say this, and then I promise to be quiet today.
You don't have to be quiet.
No,
you don't have to try to be quiet.
But to Laura's point, yes, the MOUs identify a lot of that, but then what I'm seeing in practice, bringing it down to the local level, it doesn't always operate as cleanly as we think it can in our MOUs. So I think people put the best intentions forward in the MOUs. They put their best foot forward. They have lofty goals and want to serve the best for their system. I absolutely believe that. But I don't think what they plan in the MOU always comes to fruition. And that's where we have that gap with the service integration. And that's what I think that we use those MOUs as a building block, but to kind of then see what are you saying you're doing, but what's really happening boots on the ground. And then kind of figure out from there. That's my only thought about how that connects to the MOUs.
I want to hear Drew, and then I have some thoughts, Kathy, about this. Yeah, go ahead, Drew. He's muted.
I noticed that I got started and then I saw the little red line. I think everything that I was going to say kind of has been raised. That I think what Kathy's describing is very interesting and needs to be explored. And there should be no ignorance about who any of the partners are related to the One Stop, because they are all, I mean, they are in that MOU, but to Kathy's point, it's what is the reality on the ground look like versus what we say we're going to deliver. And I see Laura asking the question about any type of elevation on the MOUs now or planned. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Laura. I will just say that the next guidance for the PY23 MOUs is slated to be issued later this month, and there's not going to be a whole lot of difference in how the MOUs address service integration for PY23 compared to the current program year. But that was done intentionally with the knowledge that this group is doing its work, and we wanted to make sure to give room for any changes or suggestions that come out of this group that would be worked into the MOUs kind of for the next program year. So that'd be program year 24.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Laura?
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Drew said. And I know that for service integration, we tied that to the one-stop certification. And so I know that the one-stop certification asks some of those questions that we're asking, and that is supposed to be submitted to the state on a biannual basis, but it has not because of COVID and due to the one-stops being closed to the public. But now that things are starting to open up again, the IWIB, I'm sure, is going to come back and say, we need to receive these again. That requires people to be on the ground in the one-stop, viewing this in person and making observations in order to complete that one-stop certification checklist. So that, I guess, it's one way that we can kind of say, is this actually happening on the ground? My thought to Drew was just, I didn't know if there was something like that that was envisioned for MOUs to say, okay, this is what you're saying, but what's actually happening? And that was all I was just throwing out there.
Okay, thank you. So Kathy, I want to kind of keep moving with Carrie's piece and then also talk about the one-stop operator focus groups. And I hear you that talking to the one-stop operator might not capture, you know, especially if certain titles feel like they have, you know, if I guess I'm thinking like if you wanted to host your own focus group, or maybe we think of something to like add in, like
we can move on with the agenda in the way you planned. I just wanted to bring that concern, and I think we can continue talking about how to broadly encompass all the voices coming to the table for these concerns, recognizing the work done by the technical assistance team and everyone in this group. I acknowledge that we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I also recognize that if we're going to look at service integration, across the state, but only do focus groups for the one-stops. We're missing a significant data collection that could inform us in a really important manner. So with that being said, let's just move forward and see how we can kind of build these pieces together.
Okay. All right. So from here, then I will turn it over to Carrie.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you want this or do you want this Excel sheet?
Just leave this, and then if we want to, I'll let you know if we want to pull up the Excel sheet. It's probably not useful, but if somebody asks a question that it is useful for, I'll let you know. Okay. So just as a reminder, the last meeting, kind of where I was coming from, is I just in general, when like big questions like this come up about services or systems, one of my own like questions that I got from a mentor years and years ago was the question like, what do we know and how do we know it? So I went to like, okay, what did people say in the local plans? What did people say in the MOUs? Not because it answers the questions like all the things that Kathy was bringing up, but that it is already a place where there is some information that local areas have written down. And of course, a plan is just that, a plan. So reality is always in all instances different from a plan, but it is a useful starting point where we might be able to see some themes or some commonalities or some gaps that then could inform, in some ways, exactly what Kathy is raising, is like, who's not, what services or what doors that people walk into are not contemplated in this that we need to find out more about, or what are some things that have come up since we've started talking about service integration, and because of the pandemic that we might want to be looking more for. So I just want to say this exercise I went through was not an attempt to answer some of the big questions, but an attempt to try to put information, like cull information from sources that we already have. And in some ways honor the work that the local areas are asked to write about that may not get used as frequently as we could want to. So I do think that, Drew pointed out to me that the local plans, there's not a template, so it might be hard to find, to go through 22 plans quickly and take out the service integration information. It might be a useful thing to do at some point, but it sounds like it would be more labor intensive. But I did go into the MOUs, and there was a question in there around service integration. And so I simply I just went through all 22. I copied and pasted the information into an Excel document that Becky and Sarah already had started that includes some other basic information. So it's all in there. I did not, I also, now that Laura brought up the one-stop certification guide that has some questions around service integration, that might be interesting to add to this spreadsheet or piece of information. But what I thought was there's probably some basic questions that we could just look at the 22 entries and like quickly go through and see how many local areas referenced their self-assessment, how many talked about specifically about a role for a one-stop operator. There might be some basic things that we could find out that might be useful to know as foundational knowledge. It might also inform, and these were just, the questions that are on here are just ones that I just thought of as I was emailing Becky and Sarah. But I did, I would add to this after Kathy was talking, well, what partners, aren't referenced in this, or what services or what doors that people walk through aren't referenced, that, we might want to ask that question. So that's what I did in the interim. I just admit that this is the kind of thing that I actually geek out about. So that's why I did it. Not that I have a whole lot of time to do this, but if anybody is interested in assisting or thinks they know somebody who would assist, full disclosure, I was part of a project in 1998 when WEO was passed, and and welfare reform happened, where I worked for an organization where we read and created a spreadsheet of every local plan in another state. So around employment services. So that was a time when there was no copy and paste and shared Excels. So it was a lot more labor intensive, but it gleaned a lot of useful information for understanding services and like sort of systems change in service delivery. So I'll stop there and see what questions there are. Oh, I also, wait, one more thing. I also thought some of the questions we could ask are, what are the things in there that are relevant to the 3 goals that we were going to look at in the policy 1, 3, and 4? So I would add that as a way to like focus the reading of it.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie, because it was a huge lift for you to do that for us. And I think that we could just build off the spreadsheet and kind of, answer some of these questions, see what trends are presenting themselves in the MOU research. And also we were thinking to organize the focus group questions around the goals too, so.
And we could certainly share it, right? If people wanted to.
We could share it. It's a little messy. I mean, not because of Carrie,
the formatting is challenging. Yeah.
It's just kind of our place to, dump things and think through things on a area by area basis.
And thanks, Carrie, by the way. It was very, very, very helpful.
Yeah, we were very
Copy and paste is a pretty good function that we have these days.
Okay, so as we kind of continue to apply Carrie's questions to the MOU research, we are also planning to move forward with the focus group. There was discussion last time about what the research thesis would be. And so we've got a suggestion here, and we tried to keep the research thesis targeted, but also to Brian's point, to not rule anything out. So the research thesis that we're suggesting is what tools are local areas currently using to implement their goals around service integration, and how can the policy be updated to support implementing these design enhancements. We're using Governor's Office design enhancements in our research thesis. So that's kind of the point of, oh yes, sorry, I see that Tracy, Kathy is. Could we add what? Yeah. Oh, to Kathy, I'm sorry, you to Carrie's.
No, I'm looking at those research questions that are on this and the research thesis. What are the tools that we're using and policies updated? And I think those are great, but I'm suggesting that we add, in addition to that, is what kind of follow-up is happening after a referral is being made, because everything that I am seeing anecdotally is that a referral is made and we have great referral processes, but then we seem to lose that on the follow-up. So as we're looking at service integration and we're looking at what the tools are and how programs are implementing them, this is a key piece where I see, anecdotally, where I see that we're missing the boat at the local level of referrals made, what happens. And that would be kind of important to understand as it relates to, are the services actually being accessed?
Yes. Yeah, good point. Carrie?
I think that is a really excellent point. And I almost think it's, so that reminds me of how many conversations over the years I've been in about how retention services in workforce programs are critical, and nobody funds retention services. So then people drop off and, et cetera. but I think there is no incentive for the follow-up to the referral. And so that's just sort of a gap. There's no funding for that. There's no, like in any of the programs. So it's sort of like that is a gap. And that is the crux of the matter, really, right? Like you can make a referral, but that's not, it doesn't mean somebody got the service. So it's almost like we have a hypothesis, like it's almost like we could have a hypothesis about that, right? That would make the most difference. And then what are the tools or things we're seeing in American Job Centers that are affecting successful referrals, like soft handoffs as opposed to just, you know, giving somebody a phone number, right? Or
right.
an address. I think that is, it's almost like a centering point for this inquiry. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? Okay, so I think the next slide kind of lends itself to what you're both describing. So I don't know, Molly, do you want to just talk through? I know that can you just give a little bit of background on this slide?
You know, I think Sarah put a lot of work
into
this,
Sarah.
so I'm gonna let Sarah.
Okay, sorry, Sarah. Sorry, Molly.
No worries.
The dynamic duo. I can't always keep up with who's doing it. Yes.
With the goal. So as Becky said, after the survey to the work group to you all, there was 3 goals that were identified as needs a full work group discussion. Goal 1, 3, and 4. And we compiled a list or, you know, copy and pasted to Carrie's technique of the comments that you all put after each goal and use those as a foundation of what we would ask about each goal. So at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand circle, you see like the example is the current goal number 1 is about one-stop operators collecting and using customer input. So then the questions on the right-hand side of the screen are crafted from the feedback that you all gave in the survey. Like, who is implementing this? How is this accountable? Is this working? Yes or no? Where is it working? Do you know if it is? And that way we can kind of help better close the loop on real time is this happening versus the documentation that exists in like one-stop certification, MOUs, local plans. And then we'll kind of have another piece to that discussion or research. But these are just draft questions that we want you all's feedback on too.
Thanks. Yeah. Yes, Janice.
I'm wondering, to tie Kathy's first comment in, do we add a question regarding how the one-stop operator engages both on-site and off-site partners? It might help us to kind of get a piece of information about if there's a problem that needs to be looked at further, or, you know, maybe we find some best practices of one-stop operators who are currently doing it well, meaning engaging partners that are not on-site.
I think that's a great idea. So I'm just thinking that, you know, we can drill down on finding out what are the tools, the part about direct linkages as opposed to on-site, and how that works within your region, and what tools they're using to follow up with referrals. We can add some of that in there, but overall, we're just going to be asking them, is it working? What's standing in the way? How are you implementing it? Which really gets to the tools. How do you measure this? I mean, I think those are important questions. And like I said, it's just kind of a draft for your response now, but we we do intend to have these focus groups by the middle of December. So I'm just reading in the chat here too. I'd like to understand the difference between eligible for services and suitable. And Tara is saying that definitely needs to be clarified at the service level. I've personally witnessed gaps in service and additional barriers created because providers aren't even clear. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on this approach on focusing on the goals that were most important to this working group? And we really do want to spend this time with the one-stop operators as a starting point to get to some of these really concrete examples of what is working or what is not working or what are the bright spots. Okay. Giving people time. And then the question around goals for other IWID groups, evaluation, career pathways, professional development. And I know that there are committees that are addressing these goals. And so we're being very intentional in not putting them into the focus groups at this point, because we're already going to have so much to talk about in these focus groups. Like, I'm like, how fast can we all speak at one time? But so I don't know if we want to think about how to plug these other goals, into other committees. If people have thoughts on that, Carrie does. Go ahead.
We could find out when the next meetings are of the committees that are relevant to these. So goal 2 would be the professional development committee. Goal 5, I assume, would be the targeted populations career pathways committee, right? Goal 6, I'm not sure. And goal 7, maybe the continuous improvement committee, and maybe those of us, I don't know, some of us are on different ones of those committees. We could present the goal statement, and we could say that we could go to the meeting. I mean, taking all input on this idea, we could go to the meeting representing this working group and say, here's the goal statement in the current policy that we are reviewing. We'd like to, leverage your expertise and commitment to this issue and find out if they have, if they have thoughts about how they'd like to be involved or not. And not telling them it's up to you to do the work, but rather we'd like your perspective. Maybe we could have a couple of guiding questions to ask at that meeting. And then if people are really interested in follow-up, we can figure that out, once we get some initial feedback. But the initial contact would be go to where they are in their meeting and just say, this is the thing we're considering that we have to consider that's relevant to your committee. Maybe have a couple of questions we'd like answers to. Would anybody like to follow up with us or stay engaged as we continue to process this or see what ideas come up? And then we can go from there.
I agree with this idea. Amy also agrees with this idea. Yes, I'm sure. I mean, I think, Kathy, you flagged this very early on in our meetings, and I'm sure it's because you're at a lot of these different committee meetings. Does that seem like the best approach to you for addressing this issue of overlapping goals in the different groups?
Yes.
Okay. So Sarah and Amy's already putting dates in. We can work offline to figure out when the meetings are and how to bring it in, how to get these points added to those agendas. Set with that.
Yeah, I think between Molly, Amy, and I, we staff most of these, so I think we'll be able to slide it in. But the information goal 6, I think, is the one that we may not know where it belongs within the IWID scope. So I would be interested what you all think.
Well, it does say labor market. There is the labor market information. So is there a committee that's like data? Is that the continuous improvement committee? Is there like a data work group of some kind?
So there's a performance work group, and there's
that one.
Yeah, I can put it in the chat. There's a performance dashboard that they utilize.
That's probably a good one.
So that part of it might be CIC as well.
Yeah, it's just like that. The committee includes people for whom this would be relevant. Yeah.
The performance committee is really focused on the required performance metrics for each, which is different than labor market information. But I guess go to the full CIC to see what their reaction to this.
It also seems like the first goal in that one is about managers and staff share information. That almost seems like I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say they're quite different. I was agreeing.
Yeah, because that almost seems like a PD type thing. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Molly.
I think that first, the manager and staff piece of goal 6 might fit under the one-stop operator. We were talking about follow-up, and I think this is related to that as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see what you're saying. That is almost exactly what. It's not just about training, it's about our people being shared across is information being shared. Okay, so 6 we might have to think of a little bit more, but the other 3, it seems like we have a plan to bring this into the other meetings as appropriate. Okay. Oh, thanks, Carrie. Yeah, those are great. Oh, referrals is also in the service goal. So referrals twice. Okay. Thank you, Laura. Okay. So.
And I also wanted to throw out there on the managers and staff share information. I think one of the discussion subjects around this was the fact that some local areas, some of the one-stop operators were actually having partner meetings and some were not. And so that also follows to this as far as that there's actually information, communication going between the managers, which is the one-stop operators, and the staff, all frontline staff within the one-stop, so that they're all on the same page. And so, and it's discussing not only their program, but all programs within the one-stop. So I think that was more it, is to make sure that they were having good, productive consistent partner meetings.
Right, we could be sure that we touch on partner meetings. Because I do think like that it's important for the partner meetings to occur, for this information to be flowing. Might be why some feel, if they're not on site, they feel left out. Your goals, Sam.
Yeah, and at partner meetings on the ground level, a lot of times it's just a core partners of for our area anyway, Adult Ed, IDS, DHS, and Title I. And I can't think of times when, and a lot of those folks have been here 20 plus years, and I can't think of a time when anyone at the table said, I know what these goals are. I want to talk through these goals and see if we're hitting any of these goals. It was always, and it was because of COVID, but using this maybe as some sort of template or professional development for people at the local level to say, when you have monthly meetings, go ahead and talk about this kind of stuff instead of, I don't know, some direction. It almost seems like people lower down the food chain that work in local areas don't really understand that they're supposed to be working on this stuff or talking about this stuff. They know that, they're supposed to be doing X with their staff. And I know everyone already knows this. I'm just saying we're talking about it, but they know they're supposed to be doing X with their staff and taking Y position with the other partners, but they don't know that they're supposed to be talking about these goals as partners and addressing them. So that kind of culture shift of, hey, on the front lines, as managers, as staff, use this to talk about the work you're doing together. There might be something that comes out of that might be useful for giving some direction. Not that it should be a policy, but giving some direction to local meetings.
Yeah, that is exactly our goal in having the conversation to find out where maybe it's working better than other places. Okay, great. Okay, so we have your feedback on the questions. We are reaching out to one-stop operators, probably going to email them tomorrow. We are going to we're going to offer them 3 times for focus group meetings in December. I do want to offer, to Kathy's point, this might not catch programs who maybe feel disconnected. Kathy, if you want to talk offline or after this meeting, or if any of the titles really want to, follow up with me or make a plan to engage some of their programs more deeply in this process than what we're going to get to with the OSO focus groups. I'm all ears. I think we could probably use some of the similar questions that we're using one-stop operator. Yeah, go ahead.
When you're talking about the one-stop operator, are you also including in that a representative from each of the core partners? Or, who, in addition to the one-stop operators, will be a part of these focus groups? Because I think if we have a core partner, 22 focus groups, 22 one-stops, and then key partners from each of the focus group at that Title 1, 2, 3, and 4, then I think we have some clarity in there. So can you tell me the makeup of and I apologize if you've already said it, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how to do this seamlessly, succinctly, but also not, scope creep and do more things than we need to. And I wonder if we could just build the core partners in with these focus groups and still stay at the heart of what we're doing.
We are going to be emailing the one-stop operators, and there's a whole range of entities that play this role. So so it's going to be, the list is kind of like that, I can't even describe it. It's, we're the one-stop operator, that just different places have different types. So we weren't thinking to invite in core partners alongside one-stop operators. We're hoping to have the focus groups be 5 to 7 individuals at a time. So I think we're also just trying to manage getting the feedback from the group. So I would think that if there are places, entities, institute that you would want us to talk to in addition to the one-stop operators, we would probably do that in a separate but similar format. Okay.
I agree with where Kathy's going with that. So, there's a lot of local areas where the one-stop operator is the consortium of the 4 core partners, so they would be represented. But in those areas where it's a single entity acting as the one-stop operator, I do believe that the voices from the 4 core partners should be included, because there may be a difference in opinion between what the one-stop operator thinks they're doing and what's actually happening. So I don't know logistically how you make that happen, but I like where Kathy's going with that.
Okay.
And to build on that, this is Amy. I think that will provide us a more comprehensive voice. Janice, you said it beautifully, because in parts of the state, the one-stop operator does a fantastic job of coordinating. And in other parts of the state, we do have some parts of the state that do still have that, I'll just say, segregated system and not an integrated system. And so I think we need to be mindful of who we invite to the focus group, and also making sure that each partner does have a voice if we're looking to be equitable in the collection of information.
So it might be us going back and looking more closely at the list of one-stop operators. And I don't think I'm as familiar with it off the top of my head right here, because I just thought, oh, we'll just do the one-stop operators. But I see, or I hear from you now, Kathy, that the list is going to be more nuanced than that. So let us look at the list of entities more closely before we send out the invitation to the focus groups, and figure out if in some cases like a single entity would, would just work, or in other places if we have to have a different approach. Is that what you're thinking, Kathy or Amy? Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. I got a thumbs up from Amy. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So we will move forward with the focus groups. We will make sure that we are hearing evenly from partners. We will look closely at the list of who's serving as a one-stop operator, and we'll continue to pull apart some of the pieces of the MOUs that Carrie pulled together for us. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So yeah, so we might kind of put the single entities in one area. Like, let us go back and look at the list of one-stop operators and figure out how to bring them together in a way that makes sense. There still might be gaps that we have to do a little deeper dive into some of the partners who are not maybe won't have their voices heard through the one-stop operator focus group approach.
For those that are single entities like we are, we would happily invite our core partners. I don't know, frankly, that most of them would come, but You know, you could ask those entities to invite them, and then the invite might have a little more context to them as well, and they might understand a little bit better what they're being asked.
Oh, that's
Just
true.
a thought.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's a good point. We could just put it on the ones to bring, but it just, I'm just thinking through how big it's going to get, you know, if we have 4 per, so. Okay. All right. Well, our next meeting will be in January, and I hope everybody has a great holiday season, and I might be circling back with individual questions to some of you just as we figure out next steps here. Oh yeah, Tara.
Hi, quick question. Maybe a little unrelated, but did anyone here comment on DOL or DOE's in a workforce innovation opportunity, WIOA effectiveness act, effectiveness in serving employers performance indicator? I know COE put in a statement, women employed didn't put one in, but I was just wondering if anyone else.
No, I'm not even familiar with it. What is it called?
Yeah, it was a new TEGL that came out and they were looking for comments. I'm not sure that the Title I performance unit reviewed it, and I'm not sure that they submitted any questions regarding that measure. But I can follow up and double check for you, Tara, if Title I did.
Yeah, thanks. I was looking at it and I know they only publicized a few of the comments and a lot of them were anonymous, but I was just wondering if anyone here commented, any organizations or entities here commented. Thank you, Laura.
Mm-hmm. All right. Looks like Marissa said they did not. Okay. All
yeah,
right.
IDS didn't either. It's a, yeah, my reason for it. But I just put in there, Becky and Sarah and Drew, would you mind just staying on? Because I want to ask you a question about the MOUs and the local plans.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you in January and appreciate all your support.